Folks, welcome back for the commercial break. Our next guest has been spot on and everything. When you hear it from him, but usually 3 months later, the rest of Washington catches up to him. He is the great congressman from the state of Georgia, Congressman Austin Scott. Sir, great to have you on the show today.
Hey, John, thanks for having us.
You called the food crisis. You called the Russia crisis. And now you are raising a red flag about something that I think every American is going to dial into very quickly. The communist Chinese are buying up farmland and other assets in the United States. They probably don't have our best intention with those purchases, do they?
Absolutely not. And if you control the land, you control the food supply. And if you look at what China has done since the invasion of Ukraine, China says they're not going to allow exports of rice and other products that they grow in their country. And now, they're buying farmland inside the United States. This is something that we should have acted sooner than we have on this, but we certainly don't need our adversaries buying up the cropland inside the United States. And outside of cropland, they do try to buy land close to our military bases. That's, obviously for spying and for no purpose that is in the best interest of the United States. But we're going to have to reassess what is happening with these countries like Communist China buying land inside the United States.
It's really interesting to watch the history of security in America because we always were ahead of security threats for going back to pre-World War II. And we always had people that were looking out over the horizon with binoculars saying, that's a problem. Let's get on top of it. Today, particularly with China, maybe because China does so much business and we're addicted to the business side of their economy, we seem to always be finding out things after the fact. I mean, our FBI director gave 2 epic speeches in the last 6 months warning, but it seems like a lot of people get surprised, well, they're buying up our land in the middle of a food shortage. Well, I guess they are. You're one of the few people that keep those binoculars out there. What can Congress do? What is there bipartisan support maybe for going and doing some legislation that puts restrictions on Chinese farmland purchases?
I think there will be. And the other thing that can happen, John, is as we raise awareness at the national level, the states can also restrict the ability to purchase property inside their states. And some states have actually moved to restrict corporate ownership of farmland. And I'm certainly talking with state legislatures in Georgia about things that maybe we at the state level could do a little better. But this is John, these people are not our friends. They are our enemies. And it is communist China. It is a country that does not believe in human rights. They certainly don't care about the United States of America or our citizens. And a tremendous amount of the fentanyl actually, originates in China that makes its way into the United States. And so the issue with them buying land is about their ability to control food supply. This is something we can't allow to happen. And I do think that we will get to a bipartisan resolution on this.
Yeah, that's going to be important. Having both parties stand with one voice against China is going to make us look a lot stronger on the world stage, even if we have a weak president right now. On that point, Nancy Pelosi has scheduled a trip to go to Taiwan. Newt Gingrich, from the great state of Georgia, of course, says that she should go and other Republicans and Democrats should go in unity to send a message. Where do you stand on that? What do you think about that?
China does not get to tell the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives where they can and cannot fly unless it is inside the territory of Communist China. She would have to have permission from Communist China to go into their country, but the Speaker of the House of Representatives does not have to have permission from China to go anywhere else. And the fact that they think we do simply tells you how aggressive they are with regard to their attempt to manipulate and dominate the world.
Yeah, no doubt. For the first part of my career in this town, we had most favored nation status, which meant every year China would have to come to the United States and say, you know what, we have to prove to you that we're good people, that we're making progress on human rights, that we're playing fairly economically. We erased those in the late 90s. Newt Gingrich has been on this podcast saying may have been the biggest mistake he made in his career allowing that vote. Are we at a point, or is there a moment where Congress might go back and say, you know what, China is so poking us in the eye now, maybe it's time to go backwards to something like an MFN relationship with them? What's the sentiment in Congress for taking a lot tougher action against China?
It has honestly not been discussed much, John. I will tell you there's a growing sense of frustration with corporate America, in that inside of the borders of the United States, corporate America seems to have this ESG standard, whether it be regard to human rights or energy, and they have that that stance inside the United States. But as soon as they leave the borders of the United States, they no longer care about ESG. And so they have spent billions and billions of dollars in China, giving China a competitive advantage over us in manufacturing, because they don't have to comply with the labor laws that we do, the environmental laws that we do. And so I would tell you, it is the double standard from corporate America that I hear more about, and the frustration from a lot of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, in that, you've got an ESG standard inside the United States, but if that truly is your corporate creed or whatever you want to call it, then why does it change when you leave America? Because if we don't burn coal in the United States, but China burns coal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with more emissions, per pound of coal burned than we have, because we actually do try to do it with respect to the environment. What have you done? Other than make it worse. And so the frustration that I see is with the standard inside the United States. And you see now where the far left is trying to take that standard into the SEC with Gary Gensler, and have an ESG governance statement or standard for corporations. Well, if you're going to have that standard, it can't be just for what those companies are doing inside the United States of America. You can't give them a gold star for what they're doing in America if they're turning around and going to China and ignoring the environment altogether and ignoring human rights altogether. And yet that's what I expect Gary Gensler will do.
Yeah, boy, it's a scary time. And it's funny, I think...
Yeah, whose side are you on?
Yeah, listen, and it seems like corporate America and their apologists in the government are willing to trade short-term profit, short-term revenue for long-term loss of American supremacy, American security. And that's a bad trade. It's never worked out well in the history of the world, making that trade. And I think you got a really impression point that we got to keep educating people on. I want to turn to another subject that you have been so eloquent on. And there are so many consequences of the open border, but one of them is the very people trying to get here are dying in much larger numbers. We're not even through the full fiscal 2022 year. Already 609 bodies have been recovered crossing our border. That's more than double that happened in the last 2 or 3 years of President Trump's watch. A lot of concerns that we've made an inhumane and actually lethal path to the United States under Joe Biden. How bad is this situation?
It's horrible. It's not okay. And, I think it was today that the mayor of D.C., has said they were going to deploy the National Guard because of the humanitarian crisis that is now occurring in D.C. from the illegal immigrants that are coming to this city. You've had the mayor of New York that's made comments about the impact on their health care and their education system. And these are Democratic mayors, John, that are saying, what are you doing to our ability to serve, the citizens that we had in this country, in the United States of America? And so there are two impacts to illegal immigration. One of them is the societal cost, and the other one is the fiscal. There's a huge fiscal cost to illegal immigration, and now you've got Democratic mayors even calling out the administration, needing the administration to stop this. Now, the humanitarian crisis is just as big, potentially bigger, in that, we now have we found twice as many bodies. These are the bodies that have been found. There's no telling how many others are out there this year over last year. You've got the fentanyl that is coming into this country, enough fentanyl to kill somewhere around 90% of Americans. It's a poison. I think that some parents have some pretty good ideas that have lost children to this horrible drug, that maybe we should treat it as a poison, not as a drug. It is a business for the criminal cartels. They generate about $13 billion a year in revenue based on the estimates that we have. And 56 of those that we've apprehended so far this year were on the terrorist watch list, John. And so I don't understand. I really can't get through the insincerity of Joe Biden and the far left on this issue of immigration. On one hand, they're literally allowing all of this to happen with their refusal to secure the border. And on the other hand, John, they've had the House, the Senate, and the presidency for almost 2 years now. Have they done anything on DACA? I don't think they've put forward a DACA fix when they've clearly had the ability to do that in a bipartisan manner. And so they don't care about these people. They don't care about the ones that are inside the United States. If they cared about the DACA recipients, they would have passed a piece of legislation by now. And they certainly don't care about the people that are coming in here that are being found deceased. And that's just the ones down on our side of the border. Why would you want the cartels to control anything inside the United States or on the edge of the United States? And that's exactly what they've done.
Yep, it makes no sense. It really doesn't. Let me ask you about the mayor, because the mayor of D.C. is an interesting character, very eloquent, of course, well-spoken. But when the police in the Trump administration was thinking of deploying National Guard troops around January 6th, her police chief said, don't do it. She said, don't do it. The Biden administration won't deploy National Guard troops down at the border to really stop the flow of people coming in. But when Texas starts busing them up here and they start to feel it in their own backyard, all of a sudden they're okay with National Guard troops here. Do you find a little bit of hypocrisy in the D.C. mayor, not for January 6th, not for the border, but my town now is getting overrun by those Texas migrants. Now I'll do it. People see through that, you think?
Absolutely. I mean, they're loyal to the agenda of the far left. And the problem is the agenda of the far left has now caught them. And so when you're a mayor, you've got a responsibility to govern. And other Democrats are rejecting what has happened. And so she's starting to feel the pressure from other people, and so she's doing things. And I would remind you that this is a mayor who, look, my wife and I had to walk through the streets one evening when we left the White House, and there were Black Lives Matters protesters all around that had encircled the White House, and she told her police to back off, and so my wife and I and several others had to walk through those crowds being constantly harassed, and until you got a certain number of blocks from the White House, you were on your own. And so she's a political hack. None of us up here in my party have any respect for because of that, and her people and the country is paying a price for it.
Yeah, really, really remarkable. The different solutions for different political circumstances, no doubt about it. It's really fascinating. So real quick, add Russia, Ukraine. There seemed like there was a little bit of goodwill going on last week in opening up some of the Ukraine grain lines, but then a bombing right after it. We're in for a long war here. And it does seem like over time now Russia is starting to make a little bit more gains, aren't they?
Yeah, it is Russia, from the standpoint of just the number of weapons they have, they've got significant overmatch. The Ukrainians have overmatched them with love of their country and heart and a will to fight. The Russians are actually, going to prisons and other areas and getting people to go into the Ukraine. So it's a difficult situation over there. Russia's strategy is a Black Sea strategy. If you look at where they're moving, they want to control the Black Sea. The talk about the grain, for example, and the ability to move ships. What I want people to understand is this: if you owned a ship and it was sitting in there at the port of Odessa, and you got permission from Russia, Turkey, and the Ukraine to move that ship that's loaded with grain out of the Black Sea, and someone's going to put a minesweeper in front of you and allow you to move that ship, you're probably going to take that risk to get that ship out of there because it's a dead asset for you sitting there at the port, and it's actually costing you money to keep it there, right? But you're not going to send another ship back in there. And so I think the hope that the world has of the agreement is a little optimistic, because my gut is that the ships that are inside the Black Sea right now will take the risk to actually get out. And so whatever grain they have on them probably moves out, but I don't see any shipping company being willing to send another ship back into the Black Sea. And I certainly don't see an insurance company being willing to insure a ship going into the Black Sea. So I think it's kind of a one and done type thing where the ships that are loaded with grain hopefully get out. But right now, John, Ukraine put about 4 million metric tons a month, close to 50 million metric tons a year into the exports. Right now, they're getting about 1.5 million tons out. That's you're talking about somewhere in the 37.5%, I guess is the way it shakes out. The world estimates that I'm seeing are still showing somewhere in the 75%. That's a huge delta between what we're seeing move on a monthly basis and what the hope is for the world. And I still think, and I don't think we see the impact inside the United States the way they see it in Africa and the way they see it in Asia and other places. But I still think we've got a serious problem with the global food supply that we're going to start seeing the impacts of it within probably the next 90 to 120 days.
Yeah, no, it's a real issue, and there isn't enough urgency, it doesn't seem, in the machinery of government to get ahead of it. It's going to be like probably the baby formula crisis before the Afghan withdrawal. It seems like we'll be trying to clean things up after the facts rather than get in front of it. Sir, it's such an honor to have you on this show. You always have the compass point at where the next big crisis is. And that's such a great thing to have in Washington because there's so few people that have that skill set. Really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you so much, John.
Talk to you soon, sir.
All right, man.
All right.